Professor Chakrabarti's latest book titled Archaeologists of Independent India, Major Personalities and Their Work. This has been published by Aryan Kange. Thank you very much. You have been, I think, published so many of our books. So let's welcome our guests. This is a very interesting book, and I'm sure we're going to hear a lot about this shortly. Professor Chakrabarti is not new to this audience. He's been associated with the VIF right since the beginning. And last year, we had the pleasure of releasing 11 volumes of his work, which is the Ancient India series, History of Ancient India. And this is a flagship project of the VIF, which has been possible only because of his editorship over a long period of time. So the work is now done. But apart from that, Professor Chakrabarti has written countless number of books. I think last time when I said 30, you said 29. So this now I can probably say 30 or maybe 31. So these are just so many books he has written and numerous other publications. So he's one of the leading historians, archaeologists of the country. He was awarded the Padma Shri Award in 2019, and he has had tenured appointments in Calcutta 65 to 77, Delhi 77 to 90, Vishwabharati 1980 to 81, and various other fellowships and teaching assignments in different countries. And presently he is Professor Emeritus at Cambridge University for several years. Professor Chakrabarti is a leading archaeologist of India, having done archaeological surveys in Kangra Valley, Chota Nagpur Plateau, Ganga Yamuna Plain, Haryana and Punjab area, and he has worked also on the routes connecting the Ganga Valley with the Deccan and the South. So he is, several of his students are here today. So he's one of our leading lights in this area. The latest book, which is here, and we'll be going to shortly, will be releasing this. The Archaeologists of Independent India has about description of 250 leading personalities in the field, in this field, and it describes their work. So I think it will be very useful because at one place you have a whole work of Indian archaeologists being described. But the book has, I think, a larger purpose also. It presents a survey of the archaeological work done in independent India. In some sense, it conducts the performance audit, as the word used here, performance audit of the archaeology in India. And Dr. Mani is also here. He's also now heading the National Museum, a leading archaeologist himself. So I'm very glad that he's here, and he would also be commenting on this. Not only the work done by the government institutions, but also the state government institutions, universities, and several numerous other institutions connected with archaeology. So it's one place, I think it's an appraisal of that work. You read just the introduction and a few pages, and you immediately see that this book is a frank and candid appraisal of the field of archaeology in India. And he feels, the author feels, that the performance of Indian archaeology has been below par. He feels that Indian archaeology continues to remain a mere, and I'm quoting, a mere minor underling of the Western archaeology. So that's a very strong statement, which I'm sure we'll hear more about it. We'll hear as to why he feels so and what should be, more important, what should be done to rectify the situation. He writes in the book that The money spent on archaeology and education should bolster the sense of national pride, national identity, and unity. But this is not obviously happening in India. And there are, and I'm quoting here, certain adverse factors undermining archaeology as a tool of national solidarity and integration at play. So I think this is a very, coming from a doyen or a senior person, I think this should be taken very seriously. And he, in this book, he also mentions a CAG report, which came out in 2017, but nobody seems to have taken note of it. So it's not him only, many others also are saying. So these are very interesting, and I think we have some leading people from the field who would comment on this. And we are very happy that Professor Kishore Kumar Basa has also joined us today, and he was telling me that he has been taught by Professor Chakrabarti. He will comment on the book and what he hears from the author. Professor Basa is the chairman of the National Monument Authority of India and the Indian National Confederation and Academy of Anthropology. Well, I had not heard of these institutions, so I'm very happy to hear about what he has to say about this. And he is a former director of the Anthropological Survey of India. And he's also excavated an archaeological site at Harirajpur in Odisha in 1213 and discovered 3 skeletons of Neolithic, Chalcolithic period, taught archaeological anthropology and museum studies since 1918. This book is candid and frank, but it serves to start a debate in public. I'm sure all of this is being discussed within the archaeological community, but most of us have not heard of these things. It's very important that we should start discussing these, because as you say, that archaeology also has a role. It is a role in discovering our identity, which is so very important. So far, it's been done mostly by the Westerners. And as in other fields, the Western influence is very much there in this field also, it seems. So I think there should be a debate. And also, what should we do now? How do we change the direction of this? That is, I think, the most important part of it. So how can archaeology, Indian archaeology, make a contribution in discovering India's past, building national identity, and foremost, building the nation? This, I think, is very important. And Mani Sahab, you would also comment on this. We'd be very happy to hear your views on this. So now I think our next program is to probably release the book, and then I request Professor Chakrabarti to say a few words. So formally we can release the book. And the publisher, sir, please, maybe a photo ho jaye? Yeah, here they are. Aye. Mani sir, please come. Please. Take this. Come. Aye. Yeah. What? Yeah.
Holding it, sir?
We have a copy. Yeah. Yes, cool. Maybe we can open the. Yes. Thank you. So now I request. Yeah. So, Professor Chakrabarti.
Archaeologists of independent India, major personalities and their work. Sometime back, the CAG, that is the Controller and Auditor General of India, submitted a report on the functioning of the ASI, how it was living up or not to its stated goals. The report was called a performance audit of the ASI, possibly the first performance audit of the ASI of its kind. The present book is based on the premise that the survey, archaeological survey, is not merely a central government organization, but also symbolizes the academic essence of the discipline of archaeology in the country. With this premise in the background, the present book brings out what has precisely been produced by way of academic literature in the country since independence. It does not attempt to write anybody's biography, nor does it try to offer an exhaustive list of publications. It only lists the basic research done by most of the individuals between 1947 and 1923 or 1924. It also lays stress on the basic theoretical perspective of this literature. If this ever broke out of the shackle of theoretical ideas offered by Mortimer Wheeler around 1947, and if this theoretical perspective is still tied to Western scholarship or its different offshoots. The book begins with a review of the basic work done by the archaeologist director generals of the survey and some of its senior officers. The chapter does not propose to write their biography. It outlines only the basic work done by them in the field and their major publications. It is a factually precise survey. No space is allowed for any non-essential issue. Secondly, the basic theoretical frame of the writings of the survey director generals and other officers have been taken into account. A number of points clearly emerge. First, not all ASI officers took their writings beyond reporting. And even in the case of reporting, there is a wide variation in quality. Much has been made of the new discoveries made by the survey. What is forgotten is that the archaeological remains are all over the Indian countryside, and all that we have to do is to look for them. If we know how to look for them, the sites will come running to your doorstep. With the increase in the allocation of funds for this purpose in the post-independence period, the new finds and new stratigraphies were commonplace. And I wonder if the archaeologists deserve any extra credit for discovering and excavating sites. A far more significant issue is what they made of their excavations, how they integrated these into the frame of the history of the country and the region. Most of them did not venture beyond their excavated trenches, and even when they did, they were bound by their ideas advanced by Wheeler and others bearing the same attitude. These ideas generally took two forms. There cannot be early dates for cultural developments in Indian archaeological scenario. In fact, it was axiomatic. A radiocarbon laboratory was set up in India when was it? In around 1960. Yes, by 1960, it became reasonably operational. Now, that laboratory began to produce only very late dates. This is true. And it was axiomatic that nothing can be quite early in India, in ancient India. Secondly, all new developments were due to influences from West Asia. West Asia was the mecca of Indian archaeology. Even the great scholars among them did not deviate from this theoretical scaffolding. All Indian dates have to be late, and everything new in India, archaeologically new in India, has to come from West Asia. These were the two axioms we worked with for a very long time. The surprising thing is the ease with which these ideas were accepted by the country's archaeologists, including the ones dubbed young archaeologists of post-1947 era. The second major chapter, this first chapter deals with the Archaeological Survey of India, Director Generals and senior officers. The second major chapter of the book deals with the state-level archaeological organizations, briefly commenting on how archaeological research found its footing in different regional and provincial contexts. I do not think any Indian area has been left out here. If one has to have an understanding of how archaeology has developed in the country, from Arunachal to Kerala, this is a place where one can get an idea. The major researchers of each of these areas have been mentioned. As far as the theoretical perspective of the related writings is concerned, that in no way differed from that of the survey officers. The next chapter on the archaeologists of the universities, museums, and other relevant research organizations dwells on some interesting points. First, the base of the subject at the universities is very thinly spread, leading to a wide divergence of resource allocation and outputs. Secondly, the intellectual perspective of the university level archaeologists is much more linked to Western archaeological thinking without any regard to the impact of this type of thinking on the Indian national sense of the past. The fact that Indian university archaeologists have so far been completely oblivious to the socio-political dimensions of archaeological data is crystal clear. This is a remarkably unfortunate situation, reflecting an avid concern for personal advancement by being in the good books of those in power in the West. It is reminiscent of the subservience displayed by Indian archaeologists of the post-independence era to the views of Mortimer Wheeler. Academic subjects progress through difference of opinions. By and large, this aspect is mostly hidden in Indian archaeology. In recent years, the Indian archaeologists have also distinguished themselves by being a relatively minor member of different foreign archaeological groups, where their basic contribution is not academic, but that of mere facilitators. The details of many of these cases have been outlined clearly in the present volume. It may be noted that the foreign interest in Indian archaeology need not necessarily be only academic. Among other things, generally these foreign groups do not consist of people who have had some formal training in Indian archaeology and ancient history, or even possess any respect for the Indian practitioners. What we don't realize is that the academic world, especially in this area of the so-called art subjects, comprises different power groups, often at odds with one another. The grip of the present Western archaeologists on university archaeologists is so strong that I predict, as an octogenarian archaeologist of the country, that within the next 10 years, all our university archaeology will be totally under the spell of the Anglo-Saxon world, with the Indians performing the roles of various types of middlemen or women. Is the Indian term for middlemen dalals? The details of the present scenario have been enumerated in the present book. The last but one chapter deals with what has been called archaeological science. This chapter shows that we have a very limited but a solid tradition of applying various scientific techniques to the interpretation of archaeological data. Muhammad Sanaullah's contribution to the Indus civilization material under John Marshall is still remembered with respect. The concerned scholars till the 1990s were all accredited scientists in their own right. However, this tradition is currently in the process of falling in the hands of academically dishonest characters whose academic prowess does not extend beyond the position of a pass course BSc and or an MA in history. This is one of the major trends of modern Indian archaeological research, leading eventually to various distortions or meaningless statements regarding the ancient Indian past. It has been pointed out time and again that we need a national narrative of our past. Considering the level of brokers or dalals to which Indian university archaeologists have reduced themselves in relation to Western archaeologists, this is not likely to happen in the foreseeable future. Which kind of educational system we have built up that the nation and its interest hardly plays a role in it? In one sense, my book is an academic audit of Indian archaeology as it stands in 2025. I am sure that it will be as neglected as the CAG performance audit has been. I am not particularly concerned. I feel that as an old professional, I've done my duty. Finally, one of my major efforts has been to investigate different aspects of my subject from the point of view of the nation and its security. It may not be obvious, But archaeology, as it deals with and formulates the nation's sense of its own past, we cannot forget the national security angle to it. India can ignore this dimension of archaeology only at her peril. Thank you. Well, this is a brief statement on the book. The chapters are quite clear. Most of the persons have been mentioned here. I've left out a few, but in some cases it has been fairly deliberate. I have also stressed the underlying nuances of various writings. And there a very this interesting picture emerges, that how even now we have not been able to offer a national narrative of our own past. This is terribly unfortunate. This also reflects on the current situation of historical studies in our universities. This is the basic point. And secondly, the national security angle must never be forgotten. I give you an example. I was quite shocked to find the entire archaeology of Ladakh, Ladakh is a sensitive area, has been handed over to a French group. And the first thing they did was to establish an international society of Ladakhi archaeology, with emphasis not on Ladakh's relationship with inner India, but on Ladakh's relationship with small Indian areas. This is what happens if any foreign groups are given unlimited license to do whatever they want to do by way of archaeology. I'm sure international, I don't want to use the term, but international espionage network has various facets. But damaging somebody else's sense of the past is one of those things. The government of India now gives permission to do archaeological work to anybody without checking into their background, without checking into their academic qualifications. Because my own survival depends on pension from foreign sources. So I'm a bit familiar with these things. I must say that most of the people who work on archaeology in India, they never had a professional training in Indian archaeology at any point in their life. They come here as a great scientist. Archaeology is not a science. Archaeology is basically a historical subject. And if you don't think archaeology is a historical subject in this country, there's absolutely no point in financing it. One character, for instance, has written, and he's got a fame by doing this, that in the civilization people drank milk. Now, that's not the kind of great scientific finding that you require in this country. It's true, K.S. Chakrabarti, who I suppose is now in Ashoka University or somewhere. His chemical analysis was done by a foreign group. Well, I have checked all this data, so no problem. Another Indian archaeologist, a famous one, has published 11 papers, major papers, I've cited them, all devoted to different branches of scientific investigations, from DNA techniques to genome analysis to facial reconstructions, whatever. This man is a history MA. This I know. Sure. Now, I'm in history MA too. Basically, it's impossible for me to think rationally along these analyses, different types of analysis. When you look carefully at the footnotes of the papers, you realize that the work was basically done by foreign group. They got their money from their own funding agencies. This is very clear, grant number such and such, etc. In Baroda University works on archaeological projects exclusively, almost exclusively, with the help of grants from Spain. The data are crystal clear. Now, they are not benefactors of India. They are not interested in building up a national narrative for us. It's as straight as that. How long will this continue? Personally, I feel quite alarmed. At the rate in which these things are progressing, Indian voice in Indian archaeology will completely irrelevant after 10 years. And I say this with all responsibility of an 84-year-old man who has been doing this for a very long time. So the funniest part is this, that this national statement in archaeology has to come from somebody who has been earning his livelihood for a very long time outside the country. There lies the fun. There lies the fun. This also shows the level to which archaeology has reduced itself in the land, at least university level archaeologist. Now, I'm very happy that some of great scholars of the subject are present here, and I expect to learn from their comments. Thank you very much.
So I think some very important points have been made, and I will now request Professor Basa to take up these points and make a few comments, and then request Manisha.
Respected Dr. Gupta, my teacher, my revered teacher, Professor Chakrabarti, and friends. First, a sense of apology because I arrived from Calcutta yesterday afternoon, and I managed to sort of just open the pages. I would not claim that I have read the book, but having sort of not gone through, just going through the pages or something like that, very because I have to come here, I could get a sense of it. And yesterday also I met sir. And then let me start with an opening statement that Dr. Chakrabarti was my direct teacher in the University of Delhi. He taught us archaeology. And when I was doing my PhD at the Institute of Archaeology, that was the time in 1990, I think he went and joined University of Cambridge. So I not only know him as a teacher, but I have been following his writing. And this is the second time that I'm being asked to review, sir. I reviewed his book, India and Archaeological History, published by Oxford University Press in Antiquity, way back in 2000. And what I said at the time and what I say now, I think there is some link in the sense that it is a very exciting experience when you are invited to review the book of your teacher. But at the same time, it is a very, I say with all kinds of apprehension, because the teacher and the taught relationship is such that it is not a one-way traffic. It evolves, it grows. I mean, as a young student of history and being taught by him, and then I'm also growing, he's also growing. And then I used to make a joke in Cambridge. That's why are you writing so much? Because you are making my life, you will be making my life miserable. Then he said, no, why should I make your life miserable? I said, sir, somebody has to review your work. The more you are writing, that means you're making my life more miserable. Having said that, there are 2-3 things I would like to point out. First is, I would like to, as Dr. Gupta said, he has written about 30 books and more than 120 papers. But here, for today's purpose, I would like to draw attention to 3 books. First is History of Indian Archaeology, published in 1988, and then Colonial Indology, 1997, and the present book. I would like to sort of draw some link and differences as well. Now, as far as his History of Indian Archaeology, 1988, if I'm not incorrect, 1988, because I remember the year very well. It was followed by your Theoretical Issues in Indian Archaeology, again in the same year, if I'm not incorrect. So what was happening was, in 1961, I think, Mr. Roy, who wrote the first 100 years of history of Archaeologists of India. That was published in 1961, if I'm not incorrect, coinciding with the 100 years of Archaeologists of India. But to me, Sir's book, that is History of Indian Archaeology, the first comprehensive book on Indian archaeology. And I was discussing with him yesterday, and I told him, sir, were you not influenced by Glyn Daniel? He said, yes. Because Glyn Daniel wrote the classic history of archaeology. And until 1980s, until Sir's arrival, I think not that somebody could write a book on history of archaeology was not given primacy. But except that book of history of archaeology of India, published in 1961. So from that point of view, that was the so he gave a new direction again to archaeology, that one can write the history of archaeology of a nation. And there again, he was trying to see both the ideas and institutions of different individuals and different areas. Now, 1997, when he wrote Colonial Indology, I found him, what do I say? You know, if you want to read the passion in Dr. Chakrabarti, I think you must go through Colonial Indology. I mean, for that he had paid a price. I know that. I won't say it in a public forum. And if you see, sir, I'm digressing it for the content of the book, just because unless one situates a scholar in a broader landscape, you know, the book cannot be appreciated. I'm thinking from that point of view. Please do not think that I'm trying to digress from the book. You see, once you go through Colonial Indology, I've gone through it very carefully. You know, the tone and the tenor, it is absolutely a rebel and a person who is here and now to take on the mighty Western discourse. That was not a small thing. And this is very unfortunate. I've not published that aspect, but Colonial Indology has not got the right kind of response in India. I'm sorry to say that. On the contrary, Colonial Indology got a very outrageous adverse review by a very celebrated archaeologist from Harvard, Kalon Lemborsky. See, and I was reminded of the debate between James Ferguson and Rajendralal Mitra. James Ferguson was a very celebrated archaeologist, giving a historical perspective to our Indian architecture. And Rajendralal Mitra was challenging him. He was, to me, the first significant nationalist archaeology in late 19th century India. That's another story. I don't have time to discuss that. The point was, Rajendralal Mitra challenged James Ferguson that the concept of the stone pillars, the Sosokan pillars, Mauryan pillars, has not come from Greeks. And there are certain other, he said that you do not know much of Sanskrit and that kind of thing. So Ferguson was so annoyed that he wrote a book called Archaeology of India with special reference to Babu Rajendralal Mitra, published in 1884. If you want to know what is colonial arrogance, please read only the preface of the book, not the entire book, just only the preface. Now, I was reminded of that kind of language when Lemborsky reviewed Colonial Indology. I find a close similarity. And I have not published it, but my personal view is, if James Ferguson's book reminded us of British colonial arrogance, then Lemborsky's review of Dilip Chakrabarti's colonial Indology smacks of American post-colonial condescence. Now, one has to understand that. Now, when I read, this is another, after 25 years, he's writing this book. Now, this book, if you see the language, it is very nuanced. The language is not that of a rebel that you come across in Colonial Indology. The language is entirely different. I mean, I've just scribbled through it. So therefore, this book, I would say that it is I wouldn't say an extension, but I would say that it's a more mature display of his work on history of Indian archaeology published in 1988. I think the seed was laid there. Now, coming back to this particular book, I find there are 3-4 points which Sir has already raised. The first thing I would say that to me, the most important element in this book, that for the first time, he is recording the contribution of about 250 odd archaeologists throughout the country. From amongst, I would say, he is celebrating many unsung heroes of Indian archaeology. To me, that is very important because, I mean, I was surprised to find that my students, my PhD students' work he has been also taken into account. I mean, I did not have the time to see everything. I was looking at Odisha, the portion on Odisha. And the kind of reference that is the one of the greatest strength of Dilip Chakrabarti as a scholar is he would give reference to a published from a very remote area in a very sort of innocuous journal, that kind of stuff. That shows the quality of the scholar, that he respects good work done by anybody. He is not carried away by the big so-called big names of archaeology. So to me, the celebration of unsung heroes of Indian archaeology is a very important component of this. Another aspect he has already said about that this book spans for the whole country. Reference on Northeast, let us say, very few people have give reference to the Northeast. Now, if the very fact that we have not taken Northeast seriously has resulted in what kind of price we are paying at a contemporary time. It is time that we should take Northeast into serious consideration, and how Northeastern archaeology and anthropology, the way they are growing, unless we try to relate with the rest of the country, I think will land us in more trouble. Here, as for when I say throughout the country, here Sir has already mentioned that not only Archaeologists of India, but also state archaeology, the research institutions, universities, and individuals. So the ideas and institutions associated with archaeology in post-independent era has been very comprehensively discussed here. Another aspect which Sir has taken up, or he has pointed out, that we have not given adequate emphasis on the work written in our regional languages. We have given emphasis on papers which are published in English, and especially for the, therefore it is time that not only that we give emphasis in our work published in English, but also in regional languages. Sir has given reference to that as well. Sir has also pointed out one important thing, and that has come out very clearly, is that he has identified, as I said, about 250 odd scholars. And as Sir has already pointed out, that these are not biographies of the 250 scholars. What he has done is he has tried to find out what is the core argument of that particular person, and he has concentrated on that aspect, and then he has given his comment. Now, obviously, therefore, his idea is he has taken the core aspects of an archaeologist, his field area, and his emphasis has been on the kind of fieldwork one has done. He is not very much bothered about what kind of theoretical engagement people have been. He is mostly concerned with your field area and the publications related to your field work. And if that, in relation to that, if you have done some theoretical work, he has taken into account. But he has not taken the other aspects of archaeological theory here in this book. Therefore, it happens that towards the end, what he has done is, in each person case, he has discussed his strength, and he has also pointed out the limitations. From that point of view, I would consider this is a very important work as far as the historiography of Indian archaeology is concerned. Last but not the least, for which he is most well known, that is his nationalist perspective. If you see, I have very carefully seen his academic growth or his writing in course of time. In 1980s, when he was writing out history of Indian archaeology, he was challenging the diffusionary theory. What was happening was, until 1960s or 70s, Indian archaeology was dominated by what we call diffusionary theory. That means there are two kinds of, I have published that. In my opinion, there are two kinds of theories as far as diffusionary is concerned. One is what we call the Iranocentric diffusionary theory. Anything that has happened in India, whether it is Chalcolithic or whether it is Iron Age or whether, it has come from Iran. It has come. H.D. Sankalia represents that. For Sankalia, any change in culture change in India is linked with West Asia in general and Iran in particular. There was Mortimer Wheeler. He said, I call it modified diffusionism. Mortimer Wheeler said that ideas have wings. It's not necessarily an artifact has come in terms of diffusion. Ideas might have come, and then you have incorporated those ideas. But Dilip Chakrabarti, right from his 1980s writing, I have seen that he has challenged the diffusionary framework. He has said, no, it is a question of indigenous evolution, how things have evolved in India. So, therefore, with that kind of perspective, his nationalism is a later version. I find his nationalist writing coming in 1990s. Up to 1980s, it was a growth. It was a belief in indigenous evolution, that things have happened in India, things have come in India. It has not been come from outside. So I would say that his nationalist perspective is an extension of his indigenous evolutionary perspective in Indian archaeology. Now, once you come to the nationalist perspective, I think his concept of nationalism to me is not jingoism. His concept of nationalism is not. It is inclusive. It is not exclusive. He has a simple message for us that you have to take pride in the nation that is India and India's heritage. It doesn't mean that we will not be critical of our heritage, but if at all we have to be critical of our heritage, it has to be in the understanding of our tradition. So I find a difference. His perspective of nationalism is different from others' perspective of nationalism. His perspective of nationalism is based on understanding of our cultural heritage in terms of India's ethos, not in terms of the Western theoretical lens. This is the first point I would like to say. And then I would say that if one has to make a criticism of Indian nationalism, it has to be within our perspective, not in the Western lens, that what is here or what is not there. So with this, I would rather say that I feel grateful that I was asked to be a part of this gala event of this release of this book. I seek the blessings of my teacher, and I would say that let him continue to write so that we will be inspired to write. Because if at the age of 83, he is coming from Odisha. I mean, last week he was in Odisha. I was very worried. Last time when he was in Odisha, I was with him. This time I was not with him. So I was very worried. I mean, every place you are going, I used to contact whether he is fine or not. So he's a source of inspiration to us. And I would pray God that he will continue to write so that he will inspire us to write. But sir is very kind to me that even if I'm reviewing his book, if I find some limitations, I tell him, and with all graciousness, he doesn't mind. He says, no, these are good points. So that shows the greatness of a teacher. We have imbibed, I have tried my best to imbibe him as a teacher, but I don't think I have succeeded the way he has succeeded. I thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your patient hearing.
That's a wonderful tribute from a student to a teacher, from a shishya to a guru. And I think you spoke from heart and also made some fantastic points. Now I request Manisab to please say a few words.
I fully agree with Professor Bhass when he says that Professor Chakrabarti is inspiration for many of us. And in his writings, that inspiratory note is always to be found. The Archaeologists of Independent India, the present book, is uh, a major work of great historiography of Indian archaeology, and that too for about 75 years or so, from 1947 or 1950 till date. And as Professor Chakrabarti has already uh, given a brief description of the book, I'm not going into those details, but I would certainly like to mention that he has not forgot any personality during the last 75 years who have worked in the field of archaeology, either from Archaeological Survey of India or from the universities or from state departments of archaeology or other important learned institutions. So, in fact, I was counting, we had mentioned 245 archaeologists by name, giving 1 page, 2 page, 3 pages about their work and how they have contributed to the area of archaeology. And if I'm not wrong, he has 14 Director Generals of ASI, 72 officers of ASI, and 134 other archaeologists from different universities and institutions. In fact, I returned only yesterday from my field work, which we are carrying out at Kurdi site. I think Professor Chakrabarti has already visited it earlier. So we are excavating the site, Kurdi. It is in Bagpat district. And in my spare time in the night, I got 2 days to go through a part of it. It was so interesting. I found this book. But I also claim that I have not read it fully. But part-wise, I have read it, and I definitely appreciate it, particularly about two aspects when he is cautious about the national security in view of the foreign delegations coming to the country and working with the Archaeological Survey or with other universities. And he has, I just to quote him, he states, there is another area where unpleasant situations have begun to develop around foreign missions doing archaeology in India. Broadly speaking, there are two types of foreign missions, one led by people who are India experts or people who have had considerable experience in India. The second type is led by people who may not know much about India, but consider themselves archaeological scientists in the global sense. So we have to be very cautious about the second category. The first category, people have been working with the ASI, as mentioned by Professor Chakrabarti. And the second category, which he also mentioned just now, those missions are coming and influencing the university scholars, and with different vested interests people are being influenced by those, and they have become facilitators, in the words of Professor Chakrabarti. So that aspect is one. Then the second aspect is the situation. I quote him, the situation is rapidly changing. First, the number of foreign missions have considerably increased, although they do not work jointly with the Archaeological Survey of India, but with the Indian university teachers with whom they can strike up a report. As far as I know, they have had no experience of undergoing any rigorous academic course in Indian archaeology and history. So, it is the high time, as he says, that in the next 10 years, probably things may get worsened, that we have to be very cautious about these missions who are coming and influencing our archaeologists. The second point is related to some of the leading archaeologists of the country. And I again quote him, to get back to the thoughts which can be interpreted as echoes of anti-nationalism on the part of some Indian archaeologists. We may recall the statement, probably I'll not name the person, he has already named him. He had been one of the very leading archaeologists of the country, that India was always a colony. That is, India was never a land of innovation and depended on, migrations from foreign lands for progress. So, that way, then I can say that during the last 25, 30 years, in fact, just after independence, people were still influenced by the British scholarship, British archaeologists, Valerian style of working, short dating of the objects. But now this situation during the last 30, 40 years have drastically changed. And I can say that there had been a paradigm shift in understanding the Indian archaeology, where even the Indian and foreign laboratories are giving dates, early dates for those sites which were supposed to be just after 3000 BC, and now we are getting the dates from 6000, 7000 BC. So it is not by one institution or one laboratory, but by various laboratories throughout the world and by different institutions who have been involved in working. So we have undergone during these days a drastic change. Now, to quote Professor Bibilal, I will also say that he has worked on Bodhayan Shraut Sutra, where he traces how the migration was not from west to east, but from east to west. And he has quoted how the Bodhayan Shraut Sutra mentions that the sons of Pururva, the king Pururva, they were sent to two directions, east and west. The son who was sent to west, he first reached Gandhar, then to Parshu, that is from Gandharan area to Persia, and then further to Arat, that is in Ararat in West Asia. So this was the course of direction of the migration, not from west to east. There was, of course, intermingling and of ideas and people coming from west to east, east to west. But the general migration of the colonies, it was Indian colonies which were settled in Sumeria, Babylonia, and in the 3rd millennium BCE, where they were having trade contacts and other contacts. So the basic idea which Professor Chakrabarti in his writing, he has tried to suggest, that is also the same, which definitely inspires us about our nationalist feelings and against those anti-national sort of ideas which had emerged before independence and some years after independence too. So I'll not take much of the time, and these are in brief my suggestions.
Sahab, recently we were in Thailand for this global Hindu-Buddhist Samvad, and we came across some Thai excavation, some archaeologists, and they have brought out this catalog, and I'll give you a copy soon. And I just read out 2 or 3 lines from this because I don't understand this so well, but probably all of you. This catalog says more than 100 fragments of stone caskets found in southern Thai peninsula and southern tip of Myanmar at the Isthmus of Kra. 3 fragments recovered from Khamao Yi in Kwathang district with a type of stone and style very similar to the reliquary carried by a late Mauryan Brahmi inscription found at Piprava. Stating that it contains the corporeal remains of the Buddha. And then it says that in the 71-75 excavation by the Archaeological Survey of India at Piprava Stupa revealed 2 similar additional reliquaries, Sudhi Ratna Foundation, etc., etc. So there is this link that they have said, and they have also come out with this catalog, which is showing one. Where is it? I saw this just now. Yeah, this stone ring. Stone ring somewhere here it was. Yeah, I think this is the one. This is the one. Yeah, modern stone. But this is the only one that is found outside India. So they want to link up and so on. And I think, yeah. And we got a souvenir also. They gave us a souvenir. I think it must be. Yes, इसको souvenir है इनके पास, अनुत्तमा के पास. We'll show it to them. And it's very, very clear, figurines and all that, the writings. But my point is that we were talking about West Asia influencing India, etc. But here is India, which has influenced. So we should really redouble efforts and try. And these people are all willing. Maybe they don't have money. Maybe they don't have expertise. Maybe they don't have, manpower, etc. लेकिन किसी तरह से, we started thinking of Ministry of Culture. Raghavendra is not here today. That project Mosam, which was a way of linking up India with the Southeast Asia, which is so very important. अच्छा अच्छा. So ये दे दो यार इसको. Give it to me. So I think with your influence, and you have been part of archaeological survey, etc. तो इकट्ठा कीजिए कुछ लोगों को, so that we can take this forward. And we have this Hindu-Buddhist Samvad, and Thai people the Prime Minister, the Foreign Minister, and so many other people were involved in this. So I think we should take it forward and see what we can do. So I'll give you a copy of this. And there was one more. वो copy और थी यार वो कहाँ गई? अच्छा, I'll give you another copy is being made. तो आप भी देखिए इसको. How it looks.
See, there is another angle to it, if I'm not. Saral has apprised me of this development. See, regarding Buddhism, there is an interest in China which tries to show that Buddhism is more Chinese than Indian. According to Saral, this is an important tendency of the modern Buddhist studies. And he thinks that this trend can be combated by establishing a university for Buddhist studies in India, where people from Southeast Asia, mostly Buddhists, mostly Buddhist monks, can be admitted as students. This is purely a diplomatic game, but a game which may serve India well in future. So if there is any taker in this August Assembly, I mean, it will be a very nice thing to do. If a separate Buddhist studies university can be established in Delhi, and I'm sure there'll be droves of Buddhist monks trying to do a degree here. Buddhist monks from Southeast Asia. And particularly that will be very important in long term. Archaeology is politics.
Yes. Just as everything else is.
I don't know anything about anything else. But archaeology is
Be a
politics.
good point to establish this university for collaboration, because Nalanda is only.
Nalanda International University.
Yeah, so Nalanda could be another important.
You know, Shashi Prabhaji is not here. She was the Vice Chancellor of this Sanchi University of Buddhist Studies. It is called that. It's a state university set up by the Madhya Pradesh government, and she was the first Vice Chancellor. She is a Sanskrit scholar. I think you probably have met her in our various.
Shashi Prabha.
And she was telling me, she was there for I think 2 years. She was the first Vice Chancellor. And they were trying to put together many, and it was purely for Buddhist and Hindu studies. She got several courses there. And we visited this Maha Chalolong University in Ayodhya, which is very close to Bangkok. And they have a massive infrastructure, Buddhist studies, etc. Of course, they have many other departments also. They have a what's called India Bharat Study Center. They have a Bharat Study Center. And the professor, we met that professor, and the king has sanctioned a few faculty, but they have no Indian resources to teach any of this. So they approached the government of India, and our ambassador took it up with the Ministry of Culture. And ambassador was so cut up. The Secretary Culture gave him 20,000 bahts. He said, please go and give to them. He says, this much I give a tip to my driver. And he returned the money. So here is people who want to do these things. And we just throw away this the opportunities that are there. So I think we have been for far too long looking into our own small silos, not bothered about the vast thing. And if you have a Viksit Bharat, as we were saying in the morning in some other context, you have to link up globally. There's no other way. And today you have that strength and so on, but we don't have the strategy. I think that's where the issue is. So at VIF, what you are saying is absolutely right. KT Sarao comes here. He has been part of. You've been part of our early discussions also. China is today owning up Buddhism, and how are they doing it? By putting millions and millions of dollars into it. Today, China has started what they call a global civilizational dialogue. It's like their Belt and Road Initiative and so on and so forth. And they put billions of dollars into it. They are going to every part of the world. They are linking up with all these scholars in various fields, not just all kinds of civilization. And they are saying that we were a benign civilization, benign culture, etc. And President Xi himself has started some 3 vast archaeological excavation programs all over China, and they are giving money to others. आप तो French और Greek की बात करें ना, you talking French and Greek, you will see the Chinese will be coming and putting money in archaeology now, because they got a hell of a lot of money.
They're already doing this.
They're already doing it. So I think archaeology has many facets, as we discussed. One is nation building, etc., but also the diplomatic aspect.
Certainly.
So we have to. I hope this kind of a book. ये मैं आपको देता हूँ.
No, thank you.
एक आपको देता हूँ. Please,
Both men.
please give us some ideas as to how to take this forward. And I also suggest that like-minded people, we have set up a small cultural group. We had one preliminary meeting. Sujit is here. Let these ideas come as to how we leverage India's heritage, culture, etc. for India's projection abroad. See, abhi kya hai ki soft diplomacy was only by doing some dance and this drama, etc., cuisine, Bollywood, etc. But the deeper level, where these connections are, it's something that we have to do. Yeah, please.
See, sir, as far as China, sir, I was, Dr. Mani knows, I was Director General for 7 months and ASI,
Achha.
holding additional charge.
Okay.
And sir has been very kind enough to reproduce my letter. You know, when I relinquished, I wrote a 4-page letter to the Secretary, Culture, that what we did in 7 months and what is the way forward for ASI. And one of the important issues I highlighted, and sir has been kind enough to reproduce the letter as such in the whole letter. Yes, in this book. Yes. So, sir, you are not talking, sir, not merely Buddhism.
No,
China, sir, China is जो soft diplomacy क्या होता है, we must learn from China. Not only Buddhism, in museum studies, in heritage management, ये सब में not only they are eyeing Southeast Asia, they are also eyeing Africa. Now, my question is, sir, if we are saying that we are going to be global leaders, that is what I posed my colleagues in Archaeologists of India. So far, we have been trained to follow Mortimer Wheeler and whatever the British had told us. But now that if you are to play the role of a global leader, it is not merely in the level of economy or politics. It has to be also in the level of culture. So are we preparing ourselves to play that leadership role? And if at all we have to play that leadership role, what kind of things we have to start? Soft diplomacy, sir, plenty of, sir, if you allow me, I can develop a full-fledged paper on soft diplomacy. Kya ho sakta hai culture?
Please do that.
I can do that.
Please do that.
Because what I have just hinted that, sir, in my letter, I hinted how soft diplomacy can be vis-a-vis ASI. You see, we have that expertise. So let us say excavation. So why shouldn't we have some excavations? So let us say in the coastal, so let's say when we want to highlight the India-Southeast Asia trade relationship, let us say in antiquity, we can have some excavations where our Indian archaeologists will be working, and we'll invite Southeast Asian scholars to come and join our excavations. The same way, when they're excavating, our scholars will go. So that will have a kind of man-to-man relationship, and that is one aspect. The other aspect is we can develop some modules. Let us say conservation, the kind of expertise Archaeologists of India has got. I don't think in the entire Southeast Asia that kind of expertise exists. So can we not have some modules for, let's say, 3 months course or 6 months course and getting them through ICCR? So we can do a lot in soft diplomacy as far as culture is concerned. I think that dimension has not been adequately addressed so far. This is my personal view.
So this is very good, because this is exactly what has been tossed around in our discussions for several years now, in fact. But we haven't found a way out to, because we don't have that bandwidth here. We don't have that knowledge. So you're all the experts, etc. So please do prepare these papers, and VIF could be a platform for taking it forward. So Chakrabarti Sahab can give us his blessings, and you all can join in, etc. Let's do something.
And Mani Sahab is there also.
Mani Sahab, of course, is yeah.
I want to congratulate our Professor Dilip Da, I call him. Association started in 2010 in Vivekananda when we invited him. 2 important points that he made, which we as independent scholars were struggling with. I always said, archaeology is not a pure science. You have to be very careful in analyzing and don't go exactly what the Britishers told us. Because everything that we read of every report was that. So he has very nicely handled that point. And secondly, the nationalistic approach that he has taken, that archaeologists have to find the roots of Indian civilization because whenever we want to write and authenticate, we have to go to archaeologists. And of course, I was familiar with the struggles of Basaji. He shared all these details with me. So many congratulations for bringing out these two important aspects in this book from whatever I heard from him. And I'd love to go through this book. And as you said, that it is time. I've come across, Arsh, has shown me some inscriptions in Brahmi language found in Saudi Arabia. And then the picture of Garuda and all that. So there's a lot that can be done if we really want to go. And I think there was a very brief reference from Panchal. One of, Arora ji, UP Arora ji made a presentation in our program that the kings of Panchal ensured that not in thousands, but in lakhs, people were trained with this knowledge of Sanskrit and our knowledge and spread across the world. So I'm talking about ages back. We as archaeologists, I mean, I'm not an archaeologist, but we as people who are in the research can be facilitated by archaeologists to really authenticate and make our nation the great nation that we are.
I'm relatively new to the subject, but I think the key point about national security angle is something which I liked, because from whatever little I have read, the bent of our presentation, as in the entire history, is led by the Westerners. We are still talking of Macaulay's point, as we were saying. So the colonization of the mind has been absolute, and that decolonization process is continuing. And this is true in all our history and our science, because we refuse to believe that our ancient Vedic civilization was far advanced. Notwithstanding the paper written by Professor John Playfair in 1789, that the age of Kali Yuga actually is 3102. 3102 BC is what he deduced based on the Brahman tables and compared with the modern astronomy. So given that thing, that is 1789, it was proved mathematically as per the modern laws of astronomy, and comparing with the Brahman tables of Thiruvallur. So it was proven that Kali Yuga existed in 3102 BC. And then he said that the planetary positions, they take about 1,000 years from the mean positions to come out correctly. So which means that the measurements were taking place at least 1,000 years before. So which takes us back to 4,000 BC or 4,500 BC. So this knowledge existed within the academic circles of the Cambridge and Oxford scholars. But Ferguson, another Ferguson basically at that time, he led the basic approach of saying or negating all this and putting in a dustbin. And they went about their standard way of Max Muller saying that. I mean, it is now that this kind of thing is emerging.
No, one is that
Our part,
what I think is that those arts of calculation, etc., must be brought back.
They must be brought back,
and so
yes,
that we can do that is, I think, one
yes,
thing that we can do.
It is not Vedic mathematics. It is basically, essentially, trigonometry, geometry, and so on. So I think it's great to hear that.
Please,
So, a couple of days before, one news came up that is from IIT Roorkee. Researchers, they found a giant fossil bone from earlier that they found from Gujarat in a coal mine. So recently they published a paper, scientific paper, after studying the paleontologist. Now it is they analyzed this fossil, and they said that it is the giant snake that 47 million years back was it was living in this area. So so the point that I want to make is that when the such fossils like a Titanoboa in North America they found, they built and also the dinosaurs and other things they find, they built giant museums and all that. So that attracts the various scientists or the paleontologists. They go, they make their studies, reports, and all that. They build museums around that. That attracts tourists from all over the around world. In India, we have several sites, such as sites. Still, we have not uncovered those because we lack the resources and all that. So can we do that such things? Because the IIT Roorkee that they found, the fossils are here. Can we build such the museums so which can, or other various places that are still not we have not done anything. Our the archaeologist or the paleontologist, they can do such studies, build museums. Lot of things can be done that can attract a tourist. Second point is that various tourist place that we have, so those tourist places also we can also, for example, that we have recently were identified various places that recently renovated. Prime Minister, our Prime Minister also highlighted. But those tourist places are there. But to attract that, can we, at present technology integrate that, like digital technologies? We provide brief info about those sites and also facilitate the foreign tourist to provide some background information that will help how to travel those places, how to stay, and all these things.
For this marvelous work that you're doing. And I also would like to mention that 13-volume work that you've done on Indian history, which is path-breaking and needs to be popularized in our universities as much as the archaeological work is very close to your heart. I just wanted your assessment on why is India dependent on foreign scholarship or foreign aid in undertaking such important work as in Ladakh or such places? That's a mystery.
The sweep archaeologists need areas to work in. As simple as that. Now, people who specialize in the study of Asia once upon a time, they need their own grounds to explore and do work in. They've been doing this in Egypt, different countries in West Asia, Southeast Asia for a very long time. This is modern political development. Unfortunately, Pakistan is now close to foreign archaeological missions in the sense it is not that the government is discouraging there, but it is simply that the foreign archaeologists are not courageous enough to go to Pakistan and to work in the territory. So their focus is on India. There are many foreign groups who would give their right arms to be given an opportunity to work in India. Now, there lies the danger. Well, I have spent a large chunk of my life outside the country, and I teach archaeology, so I know the archaeological community in different countries, no problem about that. I know them individually, I know their background, I know their propensities. So, the whole point is that if an archaeologist wants to come to India to research in, it is not that they're sympathetic to India or they're going to support our version of our past. In most cases, they will try to negate our sense of our past. It is as bland as that. I'm sure they serve a political purpose by doing this. I don't want to give the details, but you see, some years back, there is a controversy in the United States called California textbook controversy. A famous archaeologist, famous now, wrote a book on Hinduism. Actually, Kenway and Houston on Hinduism. It was prescribed in California schools, and some Indian parents objected to the inclusion of the book in the school curriculum because demeaning words were said about Hinduism. Now, this author, Kenway, was asked to revise it, to modify things normally. He refused to do that. Now, there was a lot of anger. It was a serious issue. California textbook controversy. The point is that a man who wrote insulting words about Hinduism, well, not merely that, he worked for a long time in Pakistan. He even went to the extent of writing that the Quran encouraged people to do archaeology, that kind of thing. I've quoted all these things in my book, The Battle for Ancient India. Nobody took any notice of that. Now, the whole point is that Kanoyan now is a very warm, early welcome character in the Indian context.
What's his name?
Kenoyer, J.B. Kenoyer, Kenoyer.
Books are in the part of the syllabus.
So,
The organizing paper that is currently offered.
so that is our country. So you see that is where my anger lies. That is our country. By writing this kind of things about Hinduism or about Christianity, it is very doubtful if I got visa.
It feeds into politics, right? So that's how it becomes popular with some scholars. It's part of the wider politics of this current politics. So, yeah.
Perfectly possible. Perfectly possible.
Now, so that's one factor. Secondly, your last book on Central Asia and all the other areas in which India was connected and the archaeological findings that were there ties up to a larger question, which Arvind just mentioned about our Southeast Asian linkages and those interlinkages. So ASI, does it have the capacity to do this kind of wider networking and archaeological work where, in terms of Indian civilizational spread and archaeological spread? So that's my, I mean, whether the ASI is equipped in terms of manpower, money, and vision, in terms of the larger, Dr. Mani can probably throw it. And I didn't, this one covers archaeologists till which period? Till what date? Sorry. So people like K.K. Muhammad and all these people are, according to, they're mentioned here.
The point is, it's not that Archaeological Survey of India does not have that ability. I mean, we are professional. I mean, Archaeological Survey of India has got very competent professional archaeologists. That is, there is no dearth of competence in excavating a site as far as Archaeological Survey of India is concerned. It's a question of your mandate. For example, Archaeological Survey of India has been doing marvelous work as far as the conservation is concerned in various parts of Southeast Asia. So why not excavation? That's not a problem. I think therefore, but the point is now there is dearth of human resource in the sense that unless and until the posts are filled up, then you don't, because we don't have people to work within the country. What to speak of this? No, we have posts, but then posts are to be filled up. That's what I'm saying. This is one. The other point is, that's what I said. I mean that how it is time that Archaeological Survey of India has to not merely think of working within the country, but to take that leadership role. And if you are talking of a leadership role, then we have to prepare ourselves. You know, not merely in terms of our own competence, but working in your own country and working in another country. These are two different ball games altogether. You may be a very good archaeologist, but then if you do not know how to interact with your colleagues in the other country, then you may be a failure. So therefore, one has to be, and therefore it has to be a government-to-government work, so that it has to be done in a very sensitive manner. You don't have to, in our over-enthusiasm to prove the Indian presence in Southeast Asia, we should not hurt the local sentiments. We have to argue that civilizational process is not a one-way traffic, it is a two-way process. So right from the day one, I will just take this opportunity in answering one of your question that, you see, if you If you see the Indian work, Indian scholars, nationalist scholars work, 1920s, 30s, and 40s, marvelous work on Southeast Asia. I doubt whether that kind of scholarship exists at the moment. I don't know. It may be too much on my part to say that. But Indian have worked significantly. R.C. Majumdar, K. Nilakanta Shastri, Bhaskar Chavra. I will name about 20 or 30 names. The Greater India Society was set up in Calcutta in 1928. The first volume of the Journal of the Greater India Society came in 1934, where the foreword was written by poet laureate Rabindranath Tagore. So the point is, Indians have worked sufficiently on Southeast Asia until whatever data was available at that time. Name it inscriptions, name in art history, name in anything under the sun. Literature, the Ramayana and Mahabharata traditions of Southeast Asia. Plenty of work has been done. But now when you are talking of 21st century context, so what was happening was, we are talking of Indianization of Southeast Asia. Now that suited our nationalist movement, because the British civilizing mission was saying that, well, we have not come here to rule over you. We have just come to civilize you. We have come here to teach the benefits of modernity. We have come here to teach you the benefits of modern science and democracy. We have not come to rule over you. But then the Indians said that, well, when you were in Iron Age, we were civilizing Southeast Asia. So come on, don't tell us that you have come to civilize us. So that is the kind of perspective we operated, sir. Archaeology played a very crucial role in the freedom movement, in giving an ideological basis to in the 30s and 40s of this thing. Brilliant work has been done. Now that in 21st century context, you cannot have that attitude. You have to say that, well, we are a civilizational, India is a civilizational strength. With this civilizational strength, you are a part of us. So it's a shared heritage. And in the building up of this civilization, not only that we have worked, you have also helped us in the growth. We have been influenced by you, you have been influenced by us. It is not that we have dominated you, something like that. If you take up this kind of shared heritage perspective, I think we have got plenty of things that we can do in some diplomacy. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
One thing which Professor Chakrabarti has given in his book, that is very essential to understand, that before the independence era, it was only Archaeological Survey of India which was doing archaeological work. But after independence, state departments of archaeology, universities, everyone came as a partner in archaeological investigations. So it has expanded, no doubt. But on the other hand, as Professor Basa was mentioning, posts are not filled up. So we have to impress upon the government also that in National Museum itself, there used to be about 44 conservators, and at present there is just 2. So this is the situation, and people still expect that, if there is any art conservation work is required, go to National Museum. Similarly, in Archaeological Survey of India, the present day proposals which we receive for clearance in the Central Advisory Board, they are just for excavating a site, no problem oriented survey, and by some of the persons who are for the first time giving application for an archaeological excavation work. So we have dearth, no doubt about it, dearth of scholarship, dearth of manpower, and we have to see that that was probably one of the reasons that in this entire NCR area there is no place where a proper degree in archaeology, in MA, is awarded. So 2 years back, I started in Indian Institute of Heritage, separate department of archaeology. And I'm happy to say that at least I have been able to train 30 students in the field of archaeology who may become archaeologists in the future. So in the coming years, we may also produce, because we have very good students from Delhi University or from other universities, but there is no place, there was no place till now in Delhi University or in JNU or other universities in the NCR region. So at least now 15 students in one batch we are training. So the future, I think it is bright, but at present it is not very cordial.
Thank everybody, first of all, for being present here and for doing so much thinking about this publication of mine. I'm very thankful to you all. I'm much obliged to everybody. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much. I think your book has triggered a very good discussion, and we'll follow up on some of these ideas. But the question which comes to my mind is, maybe we don't have to discuss it today, but why is it that posts are not being filled? Is it, I mean, after all, you're dealing with ministry, you're part of the Ministry of Culture in some way. So how is it that Ministry of Culture doesn't take note of this? It's a very large ministry. It's a lot of institutions, etc. So ek to wo hai. There must be something lacking somewhere in terms of thinking strategically about these things. See, if you take only approach of what is it, accountants approach, etc., then nothing will get done. Secondly, how do we bring this strategic thinking? As you said, culture, we should use it as a culture. This is what we have been saying, but I'm saying it from the diplomatic angle, because that's where we. So, culture as a strategy for making India great or projecting India. How do we, what are the things that we should do? So, please do write some papers. Please, what are the issues which are plaguing these institutions, including the ASI, etc. And so that, of course, when you say that, they will say that, you are an interested party, so aapko to post bharni hai. But when we say it from the other angle, soft diplomacy, strategic angle, and some other people start saying it, so uska ek pressure banega.
It has to be linked to the university system. No, retaining, training, etc.
The French, they've got a good method. All French groups doing archaeology in the foreign lands are tied to the foreign ministry. Straight.
So let's do that. I mean,
in India, it will be very convenient thing. For instance, I do know that a very famous site in Bangladesh, Mahastanga. When the President Mitterrand once upon a time visited Bangladesh, and I was told as a part of the Bangladesh-French deal that the French should be allowed to excavate Mahastanga. Actually, I was then in Bangladesh working at the university, and we are supposed to go there to dig. But because of Professor Mitterrand's visit, his site was taken away from us and given to the French group. So the archaeology is very much a part of the diplomacy.
Yeah, it should be. But I don't think I've been in diplomacy for so long a time. We ever thought that archaeology is a part of it. It's only some conservation, Angkor Wat mein kuch kar diya, some little bit here and there. But in terms of, we never thought they still don't think it's strategic.
Afghanistan, the reason why the French are were so powerful in Afghanistan was that they had the exclusive
from the 40s and 50s
of Afghan archaeology.
Yeah, I think I read it in your books only. I mean, and we did a book on Afghanistan, and where we found how the French, the Russians did a very big job in Central Asia, etc. And some of their influence was big, and they're very good job. I believe they were very good archaeologists.
Certainly.
So you see, there's nothing against dealing with the foreigners. I mean, if they have expertise, if they have methods, you do it. But you just guard against some national security issues and make sure that you have a good tight control and monitoring.
Yes, but we Indians, university level, don't have that control. We become only facilitators.
So thank you very much, everybody, and let's give a hand once again. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for writing something good about that.
I think it's very or
Review? Review? Yeah. Review of